My family tricked me into missing Dad's retirement party, so I uncovered the truth and watched my sister and Mom's lies quietly collapse. I'm a 32-year-old man, and for most of my life, my relationship with my father was something I didn't quite know how to describe. It wasn't bad, not great, just distant. He was a high school teacher, strict, structured, the kind of guy who always had his shirts pressed and his routine set in stone. Growing up, I didn't feel close to him. He wasn't the yelling type or the hugging type. He was just there, always working, always tired, always carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. Things started to shift after I moved across the country for a job 5 years ago. Getting some distance helped. We didn't talk all the time, but we started calling more. Little by little, it stopped feeling forced. Over time, we talked about more than just surface stuff. We laughed a little. There were some visits back home. It felt like we were finally building something real. This year was a big one for him. After 40 years of teaching, my dad was retiring. The school planned a huge party to honor him. Former students were flying in, old colleagues, extended family. Even the school principal was going to give a speech. It was supposed to be a big deal, like a final send-off after a lifetime of hard work. For once, I was excited to be part of it, not just to celebrate him, but to be there, to show up. 2 months before the party, my older sister called me. She's the one who always takes charge of family stuff. She's the one who organized RSVPs, made the guest list, coordinated with the venue. During the call, she told me the party was happening on April 6th. I wrote it down. I remember double-checking April 6th. I booked my flight that same week, non-refundable of course. I picked a hotel close to my parents' house and took time off work from April 5th to April 7th. A couple of weeks later, I sent a message in the family group chat to confirm everything, just in case. My sister replied again with April 6th, no hesitation. My mother reacted with a thumbs up. My younger brother did too. I took screenshots at the time, mostly for my own planning, so I wouldn't forget. Everything lined up, no red flags. I wanted to do something meaningful for my dad, so I had a custom watch engraved, something simple and classic, with a message on the back that said, "Thank you for everything. I see you now." It was kind of a big deal for me. I had it shipped with tracking to their house ahead of the party and asked the delivery service to require a signature, hoping it would be received safely without spoiling the surprise. When April 6 came, I got on the early flight. I landed around 10 in the morning, local time. The plan was to check into my hotel, get dressed, then head over to the venue by early afternoon. I had a nice shirt packed. I even ironed it the night before. As soon as I landed and turned on my phone, I saw I had a bunch of missed calls, mostly from my aunt and cousin. I assumed they were checking on travel plans or maybe offering to pick me up. I called my cousin back first. She sounded confused, like genuinely caught off guard to hear from me. The first thing she said was, "Wait, where are you?" When I told her I had just landed, there was this long pause. Then she said, "The party was yesterday." I thought I misheard her. I pulled out my notes, checked the email confirmation for my flight, pulled up the group chat. All of it said April 6th. I scrolled through the messages again just to be sure. Same thing. My sister had clearly said April 6th. My mother and brother had reacted. No one had corrected it, not once. There was no updated message, no heads up, no last-minute text or call, nothing. I asked my cousin if she was sure. She was. She said she was sitting next to my aunt when my father gave his retirement speech. She told me everyone had been there. Dozens of people, old friends, even people who flew in from out of state. She said my father looked around the room when it was time for family to stand up and say a few words. She said he didn't say anything about me not being there, but he looked off, quiet. I asked if he'd gotten the watch. She didn't know. She hadn't seen it. I tried calling my sister immediately, but she didn't answer. A couple of hours later, I got a text from her, just one line. "It was amazing. Shame you couldn't make it." That was it. No explanation, no mention of the date, no apology. My mother called that evening. She acted surprised that I had flown in. She said she thought I had canceled because of work. When I asked her where that came from, she got vague, said she must have misunderstood, said she hadn't really been paying attention to the group chat. I told her the date had never changed. I told her it had always been April 6th and that everyone had confirmed it in writing. She didn't argue. She just kept repeating that maybe it was a mix-up, that maybe next time we'd get it right. But the more I sat with it, the less it felt like a mistake. My sister is hyper-organized, the kind of person who sends calendar invites and color codes lists. My mother saw the messages. My brother saw them too. Not one person thought to double-check with me. Not one follow-up call, not even a reminder the day before. I didn't say much after that call. I just sat in my hotel room and stared at the wall for a while. I started to wonder if this was really a mix-up at all, or if someone, maybe more than one person, didn't actually want me there. When I got back home after that trip, I didn't talk to anyone for a few days. I unpacked slowly, left my suitcase half done on the floor. The retirement gift, the engraved watch I had sent ahead, wasn't mentioned by anyone. No thank you text, no update from my father, nothing. By the fourth day, I finally decided to call him. I didn't want to, but I needed to know what he thought had happened. He answered on the third ring. The conversation was stiff. He mentioned the watch right away, said it was a nice gift, very thoughtful. Then he added that he was surprised I hadn't come, said that everyone kept asking where I was, said that not showing up sent a message. He didn't raise his voice, but the disappointment was heavy. I told him I was given the wrong date. I didn't say it emotionally, didn't ramble. I just said it clearly. Then I went to my computer and read out the group chat messages. First, the one where my sister confirmed April 6th, then the reaction emojis from my mother and younger brother. I told him I had taken screenshots. I offered to send them if he wanted. There was a long pause on the other end. Then he said that he had been told I couldn't make it because of work, that I had backed out a week before the party, that my sister told him I had said I didn't want to come if certain people were going to be there. He sounded confused, like he was trying to put it together in real time. He didn't argue with the proof. He just went quiet. Then he said he needed time to think about everything. That was it. No follow-up questions, no denial, just silence. Later that night, I opened Instagram and saw a series of party photos posted by my sister. Big decorations, smiling guests, long tables of food. Everyone was tagged. My cousins, my brother, family friends. My father was in the middle of most photos, holding a glass of something, smiling in that polite way he always does at public events. I wasn't tagged in any of the posts, not a single one. About an hour after she posted the photos, I noticed a comment from one of my cousins under a group shot, "Where's your brother?" My sister replied right under it, "He had better things to do." I didn't screenshot it. I didn't reply to it. I just opened the family group chat and asked flat out why I had been told the wrong date. No one responded. 10 minutes later, I got a direct message from my sister, not in the group, just to me. She told me I always make everything about myself, that maybe this time not everything revolved around me. A few minutes later, she sent another message that basically blamed me for not confirming the date multiple times, said I should have checked in again the week of the party, that it wasn't her job to manage my calendar. That's when I blocked her, phone, messages, most social media. I didn't reply. I didn't say a word. I just cut it off, and I meant it. There was nothing left to explain. After that, I texted my younger brother. I asked if he knew the party had happened on April 5th. It took him a while to respond. When he did, he said he had figured it out the day before but assumed I had just flaked, thought I probably decided not to come and didn't want to deal with drama. He said he didn't want to get involved. That was the part that stayed with me, not the date mix-up, not even the silence afterward. It was that no one thought it was worth checking in. Not one person stopped to ask if something was wrong or if I had changed my mind. They just assumed I'd failed to show up, like it was a pattern. The next morning, I sat down at my desk and pulled up the old messages again, the dates, the replies, the total lack of any update. It was all there, black and white. I read through it all like I was reading someone else's story. Then I closed the window. That was when I stopped believing it was a simple mix-up. I stopped giving the benefit of the doubt. It didn't feel like carelessness. It felt like something else, a decision. Maybe not a big dramatic plan, but definitely a choice to let me be the one who didn't show up. To let that version of the story spread without interruption. To let me become the guy who forgot his father's retirement party. I didn't share anything with my family or on social media at the time. I didn't start a fight. I just cut contact with my sister for good. I didn't tell my mother what I'd found in the messages. I didn't try to explain it to anyone else, but I knew. And my father knew something was off now, too. It didn't feel like the end of something, it felt like the beginning. A few days after our last call, my father reached out again. This time he asked if we could talk privately. He didn't want anyone else involved. No speakerphone, no background interruptions, just the two of us. We set up a video call the next day. I was ready when he logged on. I had everything pulled up. Flight confirmation emails, screenshots of the group chat messages, hotel bookings, the shipping receipt for the engraved watch. I didn't explain anything at first. I just shared my screen and walked him through it step by step. The chat where my sister confirmed April 6th, the thumbs. Up reactions from my mother and younger brother, the flight booked immediately after, the watch ordered and delivered to their house. All of it dated, all of it clear. He didn't interrupt, just watched, Every once in a while, he leaned forward, like he wanted to make sure he wasn't missing anything. When I finished, he said he hadn't seen any of it. No one told him I had booked a flight. No one mentioned I sent a gift. No one corrected the story that I had skipped the party. He said he was told I chose not to come because of work stuff and didn't want to travel. I asked if he knew where the watch came from. He said he was told it was a gift from a former student. That detail hit hard. I watched his expression shift from confusion to something else. He muttered something under his breath and rubbed his face with both hands. After a pause, he said he was going to speak with the rest of the family. He wanted answers too. That night, I got an email from my mother. It was short, written like she was choosing every word carefully. She said she thought I had changed my mind about attending, claimed I had been distant lately, and she didn't want to pressure me. Then she shifted the tone, said my father had put her in the middle by digging things up and making her feel like the enemy. She also claimed she never saw the group messages confirming the date. I replied once. I attached the screenshot where she had reacted with a thumbs-up emoji to the message that said April 6th. I told her I wasn't interested in arguing about something that was already proven. I didn't get a reply after that. Later that week, my aunt messaged me privately, then my cousin. Both said they had assumed something strange had happened. My aunt said she'd been surprised I wasn't there, especially after all the times I talked about how proud I was of my father finally retiring. My cousin told me she felt weird about how no one even mentioned me during the party. She said it seemed like everyone just avoided the topic. The next evening, my father called again. His voice was lower this time, more serious. He said he had spoken to my mother and sister, that it hadn't gone well. He said the conversation became heated fast, especially when he asked why no one told him I was planning to attend. When he brought up the watch, my sister got defensive and claimed it didn't matter who sent it. It was just a gift. My mother deflected the questions and said it was all getting blown out of proportion. That's when he told me he didn't believe it was an accident anymore. Not after hearing their answers, not after seeing how hard they pushed back when he asked simple questions. He said something had clearly been hidden from him. He sounded unsettled, like the foundation he trusted was starting to crack. After we hung up, I sat down with my old phone and opened up archived chats and emails from years ago. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just checking dates, old threads, event invites. A few things started to jump out, like how I never got an invite to my cousin's engagement dinner 2 years ago. I thought it had been canceled. Turned out it wasn't. There was a group email, but I wasn't on it. There was also a family brunch after my grandmother's memorial that I somehow missed. I remembered asking about it and being told it was just something small they put together last minute. But an old tagged post from that day showed it had over a dozen people, complete with a reserved table and printed menus. I made a list, not out of spite, just to see it all in one place. A pattern started to form, events where I was either misinformed, forgotten, or written off after the fact. In most of those cases, the communication had gone through either my sister or my mother. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, a slow erosion that, at the time, felt like coincidence or bad timing. But when I looked at it all together, it started to feel different, like I hadn't just been forgotten, like I had been filtered out. I spent the next week revisiting old emails, texts, and social media posts, focusing mostly on the past 2 or 3 years, where the pattern of exclusion had become more noticeable. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first. I just knew the retirement party wasn't the first time something had felt off. I pulled up every calendar reminder, every event message, every group thread I could find. One of the first things that stood out was an email thread about my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. I had always assumed I'd been left off the guest list. No one ever brought it up, and I didn't want to ask at the time. Now, I had a reason to dig. I found the original invite in a forwarded email from a different cousin. It turns out my name was on the list, but the email address used had one letter wrong, just one letter, but it was enough that I never got it. No one followed up. No one texted. When I didn't show up, my absence was just accepted as another example of me being distant. I reached out to that cousin to ask about it. She told me she figured I didn't want to come and had never thought twice about it, that I'd always been a little removed, so it didn't surprise her. I didn't push the conversation further. That one mistake wouldn't have mattered so much if it hadn't led me to dig deeper. I made a list. Birthdays, dinners, family trips. One by one, I found messages that were either never sent to me, sent late, or framed in a way that made my absence feel like my own doing. In almost every case, the messages came through my sister or my mother. There was a brunch for my uncle's 60th birthday that I was supposedly invited to. The group message showed a vague mention, but I had no date, time, or location. There was a text from my mother later that just said, "It's fine if you can't make it," We understand. That was the entire invite. I talked to a former family friend, someone who used to be around for holidays and graduations before drifting away a few years ago. When I brought up the wedding incident, she mentioned something almost in passing, how my mother used to filter things to keep things smooth, how she would decide which details people needed and which ones could be skipped to avoid any tension. The friend said it never seemed malicious, just that it always seemed to backfire. It clicked. I went back to the list and started writing it all down like a timeline. It wasn't about blame anymore. I just wanted to see the full picture. 1 or 2 miscommunications might be a mistake, but over a dozen, all surrounding the same 2 people. I reached out to my younger brother again. I asked him straight out if he had ever noticed how often I was the only one missing from events. He got defensive almost immediately, told me I was overthinking things, said I was always looking for problems, claimed I had a habit of backing out anyway, so no one thought twice about it. Then he stopped replying. That night, my father sent me a short message, just one line. Your mother says this is all being blown out of proportion. No explanation, no follow-up. It wasn't clear if he agreed or not, but it felt like a warning, like things were shifting, and no one wanted to admit how deep it all went. I booked my first therapy session the next morning. I had never been before. I didn't go to talk about the party. I went to talk about the years before it, the way small things kept piling up, and how no one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they noticed and chose not to say anything. During the session, I went through the timeline I'd written out. The therapist didn't say much at first, just let me explain everything. Then she walked me through something I hadn't thought about. The way certain families use guilt and minimization as tools, not by yelling, not by punishing, but by quiet. Control, little things dressed up as concern, withholding information so they can say later that it wasn't intentional, shaping how others see you by only telling half the story. After that session, I sent my father another message. I told him I was stepping out of the family group chat permanently, not out of anger, just clarity. I said I'd stay in touch with him directly, and that my cousin had my number too. I didn't wait for approval. I just left the chat. Since then, I've only been in contact with 3 people, my father, my cousin, and my therapist. I haven't spoken to my mother or brother. My sister remains blocked. Looking back, I started to realize how much of my family's view of me might have been shaped without me even knowing, like someone else had been editing my role in the story all this time, and I had let them. But that's over now. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide what version of me showed up. After sorting through years of old messages and events, I decided to focus on just one thing: how everyone else knew the real date of the retirement party except me. I started reaching out to extended family and some of my father's old colleagues. Most of them were polite, casual. A few were surprised to hear from me. I kept it simple, asked if they remembered how they got the invite, when they received it, and who sent it. Within a few days, I had the answer. Almost everyone said they got an email invite about a month before the party. It had the date, time, venue, dress code, everything. The email came from my sister's personal account, not a group message, but an actual email chain with a subject line that read, Dad's Retirement Party, April 5th. One of my cousins forwarded me the invite. The CC list had over 30 addresses on it. I wasn't on it, not my old email, not my work one, not my current one. No version of my name appeared anywhere. I compared that to the family group chat. In there, I was the only person told a different date. Everyone else either got the email or heard about it from someone who did. I had received just one message in the group from my sister confirming April 6th. My mother and younger brother reacted to it. No one corrected it. I saved everything, screenshots of the group chat, the email invite, the CC list. I made a folder on my laptop labeled Retirement Party Evidence, not for revenge, not for any public post, just for myself, so I wouldn't question it later. During a call with my father that week, I brought it up. I didn't accuse anyone. I just told him what I found. He listened quietly. Then, in a low voice, he said there was something else I should know. During a recent argument with my mother, she had admitted she thought it might be better if I didn't come, that maybe I would feel uncomfortable, that maybe I'd draw attention or stir up stress on what was supposed to be a peaceful day. She hadn't said it out of spite. Apparently, she framed it like she was protecting me, but she had still made that choice, and my father hadn't questioned it until after the fact. I asked him directly if he would have ever known any of this if I hadn't pushed, if I hadn't shown him the receipts, gone through the calls, the messages, the emails. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, he just said, "I'm not sure." That was the point where I asked for one more change. I told him I wanted to keep our communication just between us from now on. No updates shared through anyone else, no passing things along to my mother or sister. If we talked, it stayed between us. He agreed. That weekend, my cousin happened to be in town for work. We grabbed lunch at a small place downtown. We talked about everything, our childhood, the way certain people always seemed to be the ones deciding what stories got told, who got invited, who didn't. She told me that for years my sister had acted like a filter. People asked her for updates and she gave them versions of the truth, sometimes full, sometimes half, sometimes not at all. Then she brought up something else. Years ago, after I missed another family event, she remembered my sister saying, if he really cared, he'd find a way to be here. No mention of how I hadn't been told the full details, no mention that the date changed last minute. Just a simple line that made me look selfish. That one stuck. At my next therapy session, I brought that up. The therapist didn't give advice. She just showed me how those kinds of statements, dressed as concern, are actually control, how they shift blame quietly, how people use them to shape perception while keeping their hands clean. That was the day I removed the last bit of access my sister had to me. I went through my phone, social media, everything. Her number was already blocked. This time, I blocked her from viewing or finding me anywhere. No mutual contacts, no shared folders, no openings. I made it permanent. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me back a small piece of space that used to belong to her, a piece she had used to control how others saw me. With all that settled, I opened a blank document and started writing a letter to my mother. Not to argue, not to reopen a discussion, just to put down everything I had wanted to say and never could, the things that had built up quietly over years of selective silence and filtered information. I wasn't going to send it yet, but I needed to write it. This time, it wouldn't be her deciding what version of me got remembered. I finished the letter to my mother on a Saturday morning. It was handwritten, 6 pages long, folded into a plain envelope. I didn't try to explain anything. I simply laid out the facts, starting with a retirement party, then circling back through every event I'd been quietly excluded from, every time the story had been shaped without me. I included the screenshots. I printed the email chains. The timeline was clear. Every detail had a paper trail. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't offer forgiveness. I didn't threaten anything or ask her to see things my way. I wrote it so she'd know I saw through the version of events she had spent years curating. It wasn't meant to open a conversation. It was meant to close one. That afternoon, I dropped the letter in a mailbox across town, away from my neighborhood. Then I went home, opened my phone, and blocked her number. I removed her email from every inbox, deleted her contact info, removed any shared calendars and old saved photos tied to her number. There wasn't a dramatic moment, just quiet, necessary finality. Days passed, then a week. No message, no voicemail, no knock on the door, and that silence said more than any reply could have. A week later, my father called. He didn't mention the letter right away. Instead, he told me that my mother had been distant. She had stopped joining him for meals, barely responded during conversations, and kept referring to herself as the victim of unfair judgment. When he tried to talk about it, she shut down, said she didn't want to be dragged into more drama. He told me he had moved into the guest room, that he wasn't ready to leave, but he couldn't keep pretending everything was fine either. I didn't tell him what to do. I just said one thing clearly. I wasn't asking him to take sides. I was asking him to stop acting like both sides were telling the truth. Later that week, a name popped up in my inbox I hadn't seen in years. One of my father's former coworkers, a teacher I'd known growing up, someone who had always treated me like a real person, not just a kid. He had been at the retirement party. He had no idea I hadn't been invited properly. He said he expected to see me there, that he had even asked someone where I was and got a vague answer about work stuff. Then he said something I hadn't heard from anyone else. During my father's speech, there was a pause, a long one. My father had stopped midway through a sentence and looked around the room. He had seemed like he was holding something back. The teacher said it stood out to him because it wasn't like my father to stumble through prepared remarks. That detail hit differently. I didn't know how much of it was emotion or guilt or something else, but it was the first time I realized that someone outside the family had noticed my absence, that it wasn't just a blank seat, it was felt. I called my father 2 days later and asked if I could come visit next month. Just the two of us, no shared events, no extended family. Just time to sit, talk, maybe go for a walk like we used to when I visited as a kid. He agreed right away. A few weeks later, I flew in and stayed at a small hotel near his house. My cousin helped coordinate a quiet dinner while I was in town, just a few people I trusted. No drama, no tension. She made sure neither my mother nor my sister were included. It wasn't revenge, it was boundaries. The dinner was simple, nothing fancy, a rented patio space, a few familiar faces, and good food. We didn't talk about what happened, we just caught up. The conversations were light but real, no walking on eggshells, no second-guessing the words in the room, just people being honest. In the days that followed, I met with a couple of old friends who used to be close before the tension in my family pushed them away. The distance had been unspoken, but we both knew why it was there. This time, there were no excuses, no filters. We just started fresh. By the time I flew back home, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I'd won anything, but I felt clear. The noise was gone. The story wasn't tangled anymore. I wasn't trying to get back into the family anymore. I wasn't trying to fix things, smooth things over, or earn a seat at the table. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I just wasn't letting them write my part anymore. I flew in early on a Friday morning. It had been years since my father and I had spent time together without the rest of the family around. No dinners where someone else dominated the conversation, no passive-aggressive remarks floating between bites, just him and me. He met me at the airport. He looked older than I remembered, but lighter somehow, like something heavy had finally been put down. We kept the conversation simple during the drive: traffic, the weather, work updates, the usual buffer topics people use when something heavier is waiting behind them. That evening, we had dinner at a quiet spot near his house. He cooked, which surprised me. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, but it felt intentional. After dinner, we watched an old game on TV and didn't say much. The silence wasn't awkward, it was calm. Still, everything we weren't saying hovered just beneath the surface. The next morning, we had coffee in the backyard. The weather was cool. He brought out 2 chairs, no distractions, no phones. That's when I brought up the party. I laid it out the same way I had done on the video call weeks ago: the date, the group chat, the email invite I never received. I opened my bag and handed him a folder I had printed before the trip. Copies of everything laid out clearly: the screenshots, the email CC list, the forwarded messages. It wasn't emotional, it was factual. He didn't interrupt. He read through the pages, flipping back once to double-check something. Then he sat back and said he should have questioned everything earlier. He admitted he had accepted the version given to him by others because it was easier, that he hadn't even opened the watch box until the day after the party. When he asked my mother who it was from, she said it was probably a former student. He hadn't thought to ask again. He apologized, not dramatically, just straight. Then he told me he hadn't realized how obvious it was until he saw it in front of him. The fake invite date, the missing email, the way no one followed up. I told him I wasn't looking for sides. I just needed him to stop standing in the middle. That silence wasn't neutral, it was permission. He nodded and said he understood. Then he said something I hadn't expected. He was done letting other people decide which version of the truth got told. We spent the afternoon at the park I used to play in as a kid, the same one where he used to push me on the swings while grading papers on a clipboard. We sat on a bench near the basketball court and talked for hours, not just about the party, about everything, times he wasn't there, and times I didn't let him be, how we both had let other people fill in the blanks between us. That night, as we sat in the living room, he said he wanted to write his own letter, not to me, to everyone. He wanted to be clear about what happened and where he stood now. I didn't say much, just listened. He asked if I thought it would make things worse. I told him it probably would, but sometimes worse is what comes before better. The next day before I left town, I met my cousin and 2 childhood friends for lunch. They'd seen the fallout from a distance and had questions. I didn't give them the full breakdown, just the facts. They weren't surprised. All 3 said they had noticed for years how my sister and mother seemed to guide the narrative: who was invited, who was informed, who was left out. One of them said, "It always felt like things were being curated." That word stuck. On my last night, my father handed me a copy of the letter he planned to send. It was printed on plain white paper, a few pages long. He didn't ask me to read it for approval, just wanted to know if it was honest. I read it twice. It was clear, direct, and more personal than I expected. He didn't shift blame, but he didn't dodge it either. He named names. He owned his silence. He didn't ask for anything in return. The next morning, he dropped me off at the airport. No dramatic goodbye, just a handshake, a half smile, and a promise to keep calling. On the flight home, I didn't replay the conversations. I didn't try to predict what would happen next. I knew things were going to shift soon, probably not quietly, but for once, I wasn't carrying all of it alone. A week after I got back home, the letter went out. My father sent it by both email and regular mail. He addressed it to my mother, my sister, and several of his siblings. I was copied on the email version. There was no build-up, no warning. It just landed in inboxes and mailboxes like a thunderclap. The letter was longer than I expected. It laid everything out in plain, direct language, no passive voice, no smoothing things over. He wrote about the retirement party, the false excuse about me skipping it for work, the watch that had been misrepresented as coming from someone else. He wrote about the emails I was never included in and the messages that were never corrected. Then he turned it toward himself. He admitted that he had failed to ask questions, failed to protect his son from being slowly cut out over time. It wasn't flowery, it wasn't emotional for the sake of being emotional. It was just true. That's what made it hit. Within 24 hours, everything exploded. My sister replied to the email chain with several long paragraphs. She called the letter an attack, said our father was publicly choosing sides, claimed that he was letting lies divide the family. Then, after a few more jabs at both of us, she blocked him and me. Phone, email, everything. She was gone. My mother didn't reply to the group. She sent my father a separate message, short, cold, and formal. She said she was deeply disappointed and would no longer participate in any conversation she considered emotional manipulation. That was her wording, like someone had filed a complaint at work, not inside a family. Then she mailed a letter directly to me. It arrived 4 days later in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. Inside, she wrote that she didn't recognize the version of events being shared and accused me of tearing the family apart for attention. She said I had always been overly sensitive and prone to rewriting history. I didn't read it twice. I blocked her number, email, and any trace of contact the moment I finished reading. The letter went into the trash. That same week, several cousins and family friends reached out. Most of them said the same thing. They'd always assumed I chose to skip the party. A few said they now realized that wasn't the full story. 2 relatives admitted they had been left out of past events too, though never as blatantly. They said they hadn't thought much of it at the time, but after seeing the full picture, they started reevaluating a lot of things. My father pulled himself out of all the family group chats, the main one, the side ones, even the old chain that just circulated jokes and holiday greetings. He told everyone he needed to reset his priorities and would reach out individually if needed. No one pushed back. After all that, my father started therapy. I helped him find a local counselor, someone recommended by a friend of mine. He didn't tell anyone else. He didn't make a show of it. He just went. Meanwhile, my cousin organized something at her apartment, just a casual evening, nothing fancy. She jokingly called it a reunion for the sane ones. A few friends came by, no drama, no hidden agendas. Just people sitting in a room, eating good food, catching up. She asked if I wanted to tell the full story, and I said yes. Not to vent, not to get sympathy. I told it like you'd tell someone how a storm came through and took half the roof off, just facts, start to finish. Everyone listened. A couple of people asked questions, some just nodded. The vibe wasn't pity, it was awareness, and that was enough. By the end of the night, after the last person left and the dishes were done, I sat out on her balcony with a drink and thought about the original party, the one I never made it to, the one I flew across the country for. That party was supposed to be a celebration, a final toast, a gathering of people who had watched my father build a life. And I missed it because of a lie. But what I ended up with was something different, smaller, but more honest, a truth that cut through everything fake, a version of the story where I wasn't invisible, wasn't rewritten, and didn't have to ask permission to exist. The toast never happened. The cake was never cut in my presence. But what came after meant more than either of those things ever could. Several months passed. It had been quiet, intentionally so, the kind of quiet that feels earned, the kind that doesn't ask for explanations. Since the day I landed expecting a celebration and ended up unraveling years of misdirection, everything in my life had shifted. My father and I were in touch more than ever. Weekly video calls, book recommendations, text threads filled with things we would have never shared even a year ago. We started planning a trip together, just the two of us, to a coastal town he always talked about visiting but never made time for. Nothing fancy, just walks, local food, and space. My cousin and I grew closer. We spoke often. She filled in the blanks that used to be filled with silence or spin. Where I had once leaned on siblings who didn't really see me, I now had someone who did. Someone who never pretended that dysfunction was normal or that ignoring it made it go away. Therapy continued. I stayed committed to the work, and it started to carry over into other parts of my life. I talked openly with my partner about what had happened. No filters, no need to soften it. For the first time, I was naming things as they were, instead of what I was told they should be. One day, a mutual friend messaged me, someone who used to be close with my sister. She told me my sister had been going around saying she was ganged up on by her father and me, claimed we were rewriting history to make her look bad, but no one seemed to be echoing it. The story wasn't landing like it used to. People had started making up their own minds. My father's full retirement finally happened a few weeks later. No large event, just a private dinner, 5 guests. I was the first one he invited. He hosted it in his backyard under string lights he had put up himself, the kind of setting where no one had to perform. Toward the end of the night, he stood up and gave a short speech, nothing dramatic. He talked about teaching, about closing chapters, and about learning things too late. Then he turned to me and said what he didn't get to say the first time, that he was sorry for letting others tell the story of his family without checking if it was true, that he should have stood up sooner, that he was proud to have me there now, not because I had returned, but because I had stayed honest. I didn't cry during the speech, but when it was over and everyone went back to their plates, I felt something crack open, not because of the apology itself, but because, for once, I wasn't invisible. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to prove anything. I was there, and I was seen. Later that night, the same teacher who had pulled my father aside at the original party approached me again. He looked at me, then said, "This is what should have happened that day. I'm glad I got to witness it now." He didn't need to say more. After everyone left, I stayed back for a while, walked around the backyard in slow circles. The air was cool. No more speeches, no more lists of what went wrong, just the final note of something that had taken too long to resolve but was finally done. Back home, I sat at my desk and wrote something I hadn't planned to, a personal essay, just for myself. I titled it "The Party I Never Attended and the Truth That Finally Showed Up." It wasn't for public eyes, just a record of what happened, beginning to end. A way to remind myself that the version of me in that story was real, even if others tried to edit him out. During my next therapy session, I talked through the dinner, the letter, the silence that followed. My therapist told me to stop framing this as something I lost, to view it instead as something I found. Not closure in the cliché sense, but a shift from passive participant to someone who tells his own story. I haven't heard from my mother or my sister since I blocked them. No texts, no letters, no surprise messages through someone else. And I don't check anymore. I don't expect anything. That part of my life isn't frozen, it's finished. I didn't get to stand next to my father at his retirement party. I didn't give a toast or pose for photos, but the silence that followed gave me something else, something better. This journey didn't end with forgiveness, it ended with acceptance. Some people choose to rewrite, others choose to disappear, and a few choose truth. As strange as it sounds, missing that party was the moment I stopped missing.